All right, welcome everybody. This afternoon's discussion, I'm looking at very exciting 45 minutes of discussion. We have quite the panel here today. Just a quick history of myself. Brian Kostrowski, Executive Director at Agriculture Council, Saskatchewan. I've been in the food industry for about 30 years, various positions throughout the food industry in Western Canada. Managed some co-packing plants, value chain specialist for ACS. Led some initiatives across Western Canada. So now going into the value add and supply chain categories over the past 10 years, which has seen a lot of different things happening. Next person I'd like to introduce is Brett Casavant, CEO of C-Merak. For Brett, agriculture is a profession of execution of optimism. He believes people need to feel the connection to the land that feels their body, mind, and soul. Following university, Brett returned to the fourth-generation family farm, expanding the operation by 400% and bringing in new crop varieties such as faba beans in the Tisdale region. Today, as CEO of C-Merak, Brett leads the farm's growth in value-added processing, connecting consumers to quality food ingredients from locally grown faba beans and oats. C-Merak manages every step of the process, sourcing directly from family farms, preparing and storing the feedstock at C-Merak's grain terminal, and creating ingredients in a brand new state-of-the-art dry mill and fractionation facility. C-Merak's portfolio includes Faba Fuel protein concentrate, Faba Fuel flour, and Prairie Fuel oat groats, flakes, cuts, and flour. Simply pure, all natural, and 100% Saskatchewan, C-Merak's ingredients are totally fabulous. Welcome, Brett Casavant. Next, I'd like to introduce Jeff Gross, producer. Jeff has over 25 years experience in ag and ag tech companies. He was a founding shareholder of Terra Grain Fuels, North America's largest wheat-based ethanol plant and production of over 165 million liters of fuel annually. Jeff was also the founder of Sea Green Aggregators, Canada's first and largest ag carbon credit trading firm, where he was the first person in Canada to trade a verified carbon credit. Jeff continues to run his farm outside of Regina and has expanded into vertical growing with ag tech company Quanto Tech, which is currently growing lettuce for UBC and expanding across Canada. Welcome, Jeff. Next person, Sav Bellissimo, Store Brands Manager of Federated Cooperative Limited. Sav is the Store Brands Manager for Federated Cooperative Limited. FCL is the largest non-financial cooperative in Canada, which is owned by 180 retail cooperatives across Western Canada. Sav has been in the consumer packaging goods industry for over 30 years with a key focus on product and brand development, as well as private label. A graduate of the University of Saskatchewan, Sav has a reputation as an adaptive strategic leader with a proven ability to identify and capitalizing on emerging market trends. Sav is passionate about the local producers and the importance of establishing closer ties between the products on the shelf and the farmers who grow ingredients. Before we go to our panel discussions, we're going to play a video here. A video is going to go on a very new, innovative product on the shelves of Western Canada. It's a Co-op Gold Pure Oat Beverage. And so when I talk about innovation and collaboration and partnership, this video will tell you a story.
The oat beverage really is a full circle product. It really captures a lot of the things that are super important to Co-op, which is local and sustainability. We grow the oats right in our backyard in Saskatchewan. We transfer that to Saskatoon where it's packaged and produced, and then it ships all across Western Canada to serve our members. Really, it can be used in place of anything where milk is used. We do oat beverage, original, unsweetened, and then we have vanilla and chocolate.
Casavants have been members of the co-op for many years and have been great supporters of the co-op here in town.
We're 102 years in operation, and the main goal there is to grow a good quality, clean product. We're doing as much as we can from our part to minimize environmental impact. Our family, myself, we have 3 boys, and we want to leave them with a world, hopefully better than what we came into it with.
I don't think it gets more rewarding. You can actually see your product on the shelf. We want to create the transparency, the traceability, creating that relationship all the way from the consumer back down to the farmer, and for them to see that we're creating the most healthy, high quality food here, and being able to do that with someone like Co-op, who is in every small town and supporting all the rural areas here. I don't think you could ask for a better partner to do it with.
The Casavants are great partners to us. Altogether, we create a product that is really thriving our local Western Canadian economy. We're really investing in Saskatchewan and Canada together to create this end product that consumers can then go and pick up from their local communities.
That's a great story and a great video. Hats off to these three gentlemen. They're the one who got this product off the ground and in the stores, and it's been very successful. As we move forward here, we're going to talk about agriculture sustainability and farming inputs. First, I'm going to go to Brett and ask him about FCL's Farming for Success program.
Thanks a lot. Yes, we've been a co-op member for a long time, but I think what is really cool about the co-op program and what we're doing is that we've been able to buy our inputs, work with our fuel with the local co-op retails in our area, and then we produce the crops, grow them, turn them into ingredients, and then basically those ingredients go full circle back to the co-op and to make products for on the shelf. And it's an opportunity that's hard to find anywhere else, to be that integrated right from front to back. And so it's been a great relationship. The co-op understands agriculture, they understand farmers, and they understand the customer. And so it's made it very easy for us to work together and grow the relationship. And I guess the big goal, as said in my introduction from Brian, was that we're trying to get it so that the farmers, right from the production of the ingredient, is tailored to what the consumer is looking for. And I think there's been a bit of a disconnect in the past. And a relationship like this is fully integrated, and it really allows information to pass back and forth easily so that we can make adjustments to what we're doing to meet what the consumer wants.
Sav, I'm going to come to you now on this Farming Success program. Provide an overview on behalf of FCL.
Yeah, just to go on what Brett said and expand, it really changed our thinking. I think we started thinking this way. I've been a co-op of 10 years ago, and as a brand, how do we differentiate ourselves? And it was really just starting to work with what we grow out in Western Canada and then try to develop product based on that, rather than having a supplier come in and telling us what we should list or product develop kind of thing. So, we started looking at it in different ways. We got into our own jams, our own pickles, using local Western Canadian ingredients. And then the oat beverage was a real big opportunity for us. We could have easily gone and had the product produced either in the States or Eastern Canada, but we really stuck to our guns and wanted to develop out here, but we also wanted to have that traceability for our consumers right back to the grower, and have the grower the star of the product, because it's really important for us to really show people and consumers where the product comes from. So, it's a big goal of ours is to localize our supply chain as much as possible.
Jeff, I'm going to come to you now with the history of the technology development regarding this process.
The history of the technology, the cavitation technology, is quite interesting. Where it comes from is the old Soviet military, from the old Soviet bloc prior to the dissolution of the Soviet Union. So the technology was developed to be used in a submarine. So when the Soviet submarines were down in the water, they would dispose of their garbage. They would leave a big trail of garbage or waste, and obviously some noise as well too. So what they had done was they had come up with the idea of using cavitation technology to basically pulverize all of the garbage that would be on the submarines. And so through that technology that they had developed of the idea of pulverizing stuff, when the Soviet Union disbanded, there was a fellow out of the Ukraine that went and patented a bunch of the technologies around the world. So what he had done was took this and started developing it and how to use it in processing soy and to make soy milk. And then there was a group of business guys from Saskatchewan that ended up going down to Cuba to try to do some farming there. So there was a deputy premier of the province and Wayne Goranson were down there, and they were running about, I think, 65,000 acres of farming. And so one of the byproducts that come out of their relationships with the government down in Cuba was they got introduced to this inventor fellow who's quite interesting. And so when they got introduced, they ended up taking ownership of some of these patents and working on developing how to make soy milk. So then over the years, they spent, I believe it was about 14 years developing it, and they ended up making soy milk. And then when COVID hit, they were doing this down in Haiti. They ended up going to PIC and getting a grant to bring it back here and working with Federated to set up a program on how to use the cavitation technology to make milk out of oats. So over the past couple of years, they've kind of worked on optimizing that, and it seems to have turned out quite well now. So that's kind of the origins of how that started.
So Jeff, I'm going to come back to you regarding this technology and the production of the Food Development Center. Provide an overview of the setup and the process of setting up and where it is now.
So we came along about halfway through the actual build out of the project, but I've known the Goranson family for quite a while, and they had went to the food center because of, you know, the easiest place to get space was the food center because it was all CFIA regulated and it was a great body to go into. So, you know, they had done the original kind of design work in there, and it's a tight space, so it wasn't perfect and optimal. And then about, I think, halfway through the project, we ended up coming in and joining up with them and completing the technology. So, you know, what we had done was brought in our folks to help complete it off, and that's about it.
All right, I'm going to move on to agriculture sustainability. I'm going to go to Brett to provide an overview of sustainable farming practices.
Okay, yeah, great question. And as far as we see with farming, there's been things from the government like a 30% reduction in fertilizer, and it came across interesting to where farmers were nervous that they were going to lose production and do things like that. But I think the nice thing about these goals that are set is that we can't lower production, but we need to lower our carbon footprint and what we're doing in the world to affect the environment. And so what we've really focused on is how to maintain or increase yields with technology. And that technology started with zero-till, started with one-pass farming, sectional control, variable rate, all these technologies that we've now have become the norm, but are now moving into biological fertilizers and different things where we're actually using composting and different things like that to create products that can go into the soil to make the soil healthier, treat the soil more like our gut and the health there to produce things. And so I think that farmers are very interested to do this. The issue with how fast it happens is that you become beta testers, right, for the new technologies and the new things that happen. And it doesn't always work well, and it costs to try it, and it takes a lot of effort. But with technology, to be able to track yields, track inputs very precisely, and tie everything together, we've been able to measure the results a lot better. And I really think that Canada is a leader in not only the technology to put down the different nutrients and that the soil needs, or to do pest control or things like that, but they're also leaders in the technology of how to trace all that back, control it, analyze it, overlay it, and look at what the results are and how we can use it well. So I think we're headed in a fantastic direction. we just need to, we need time for the technology and everything to, it's hard to put a firm timeline on something depending on how the technology works. And it's, I think the biggest thing that everyone that I know, I feel in agriculture is that every area within even Western Canada or Saskatchewan, there's different soil types, there's microclimates, there's all kinds of different things that happen, there's different crops that are grown. And so it isn't as easy as you think just to change your farming practices in a positive way to either increase or maintain the production levels. And so everything has to be tailored to different areas. So it's a big effort, but I think everyone's committed to it. And I think with good partners like the co-op, for example, who is helping us with the technology in order to track our different things that we're doing in the field and things like that, it makes it a lot better if you work together with people instead of on an island on your own.
Okay. I'm going to go to Sav here. Adding value commodities at source. Sav, provide an overview of the canola crush partnership program with AGT.
Yeah, that's definitely not my area of interest, but it's I know a bit about it. I think there's two parts to it. You know, the FCL part, again, on sustainability on fuel is using that canola oil for fuel, and then the byproduct, AGT is gonna produce product, mainly fish meal, but there's other opportunities as well on some of the byproducts. So, you know, you can't do anything these days without thinking about byproduct as well from a sustainability standpoint. So that's, you know, it's an exciting project. As, you know, just to expand on Brett, the challenges on the ag side, there's challenges, you know, on the retail side or on the fuel side too. There's no silver bullet to on sustainability, but at the same time, there is steps that we can do to improve that.
Jeff, looking at control of supply chain and connections, provide an overview of that.
So for supply chain connections, and it's kind of a tough one, but on the supply chain connections, you're kind of getting at how hard is it to get supplies of certain products. So basically, you know, in the, starting with the farm side of things, it's been a little bit challenging in the last say 2 years, mainly due to disruptions with fertilizer production all over the world. We haven't had the problem of not being able to get product. I know there was a shortage of phos, I believe, last year, but like Brett said, with a bunch of these new different types of bio-based fertilizers and starters and whatnot, there's been an onslaught of some new products coming onto the market that you can use as fertilizer enhancers or in some cases even replacements. So what that has done is it's made it it's given us a bigger menu of products to use at our disposal. So when you have, you know, a war in Ukraine and you have Russia not wanting to sell us fertilizer, it's made it a lot easier. With that being said, is you know, every farmer basically is kind of the steward of their own shop. So, you know, you have to be a little more cognizant of your supply issues, and you have to pre-book things. I know we haven't, and I don't think Brett's ran into problems, but we've taken a little bit more steps to be able to get our hands on fertilizers and stuff like that. The one piece of the puzzle that I think has been one of the hardest things is in microchips. I know that if you have, you know, the biggest thing that I dread happening is in a tractor if one of your screens goes down, because those seem to be the hardest things to get your hands on. So getting replacement parts that involve chips has really taken a hard turn. It seems to have eased up a bit. So, you know, hopefully in the future, I think that should start to rectify ourselves. And then a lot of it too is going to be in the next 5 years with the onshoring of a lot of technology stuff back into North America and into safer jurisdictions. I do think that's going to get a lot easier.
I want to look at the use of byproducts for processing. Brett, provide an overview of that.
I think Sav alluded to it in his discussion, or spoke to it in his last discussion too, that it is the way that plant-based and everything is headed, and this ingredient processing, the profit is in the effective use of byproducts. So from an economic perspective, it's a must. From an environmental perspective and a closed loop perspective, it's also a very, very important thing. And what we found is that especially in Saskatchewan, we have so much support and so many good things with the U of S, the Food Center, different groups around to help us with different projects, and inviting people from around the world, like Europe and all over, that are doing all kinds of innovative things. We're able to take our starch, for example, that is a byproduct to our protein production, and look at using that into a project like fermentation where we make an oil product that we need in a food product that it just gets cycled around our footprint where we're at in Tisdale, Saskatchewan, where we have all the utilities and the logistics infrastructure to build the actual plant, or close to Saskatoon, where we can work with a company like Sonic and use our byproducts to then make either other ingredients we need or ingredients that are useful to our partners and our collaborators. So I think that from packaging to other food products to getting into the pet food market and everything else, we have very valuable products. They just need to be marketed properly and really educate the customer on what we can do. And I think the very interesting part in our collaborations with making food products and understanding more about from when you grow the crop all the way through to when the food product is made and all the different ingredients that are needed, it really opens your mind up to what you can do with the different byproducts, and that you can implement that right all in a closed loop on site without having to ship things all over the world.
And just to expand on that, from a development side, product development side, we go into these projects, especially our farm to fork projects, thinking on that as a whole. Like, what do we do? Is there a byproduct? Can we develop product with it? Can we make something out of it? And that's why it's great not only to have the relationship with your farmer and your processor, but also with an organization like the Food Center, Saskatchewan Food Center, that has all the food scientists there, that can help us really dig into making sure that nothing goes to waste and we're using all the byproduct as well as the ingredients as well.
All right, looking at eco-friendly packaging products. Sav, provide your overview of that on behalf of a retailer.
For us, especially on the food retail side, packaging is the number one thing we're trying to tackle, and the reduction of plastic is probably number one. We still need plastic for food safety reasons or whatever. In this case, in our video, you could see the packaging was somewhat different, but when you going into this project, that the packaging had to, because the product's aseptic, had to withstand that. So we couldn't get anything that was 100% recyclable or cardboard or anything like that. And then we found EcoLean out of Sweden, and they use 65% plastic in weight versus the other 35 is the ingredient you make chalk out of, kind of thing. So that was, again, nothing's going to be a silver bullet, and nothing's going to be 100%. So that was really important for us to at least reduce the plastic and the weight as well, because it weighs basically nothing to get it over here. So those were all really, really, really key factors in us deciding on that packaging as well. And moving forward, when we talk about innovation, and we're, especially as a product developer, you're always keen on innovation. We're going to start looking at packaging part of that innovation, not just the end product, but how can we package it using less plastics, making it more recyclable, or using more recycled products in our packaging. So
I think we've also gotten to spend a lot of time with some of our byproducts in the packaging side of things, and there's scientists working on it. The starches make fantastic replacements for the current packaging. There's tannins, for example, in some of our faba bean hulls, and that's a great antioxidant, keep shelf life longer for the products that are stored if you include that in your packaging and different things like that. So there is lots of testing going on. It's really around the technology catching up to the needs that we're looking for, but I think there's a ton of focus on it and it's going to come fast. And the cool part is if you can actually make the packaging for your products with your byproducts right on site, it creates a lot of good synergies as well for logistics and cost.
Yeah, and just the most important thing on this, and I think Brett talked about it earlier on the ag side, is it's not co-op doing it alone, it's not one retailer, it's the whole industry, from all the retailers and all the manufacturers getting together and deciding this is the direction we want to go.
You know, the other big collaborator on this stuff that's really interesting, and if anybody ever gets a chance, is to stop over at the U of S, because the polymers work that they're doing using starches as a replacement for oil, and the plastics that they're making out of there are actually quite phenomenal. So it's the U of S has got, I know, a handful of projects that they're working on. They're also working on projects with Case, I believe, where they make actual panels out of canola byproducts and whatnot. But the plastics that they can make are quite interesting.
All right, so we're going to look at some post-pandemic issues, supply chain changes. Sav, what has changed post-pandemic from a retailer perspective?
Definitely lead times, you got to plan way ahead. You know, those are the major, pricing changes all the time. What else is going out there? Contraction, that's a huge part, is companies contracting their business, deciding to just, all of a sudden drop out of business, and then just trying to find new suppliers and stuff like that. So those are like the big ones. Logistically, the rise of transportation costs, so you got to be sharper logistically, and then you got to build the lead times into that because the lead times are a lot larger. Just working on projects, even our jam project, where we took for granted we could always find Western Canadian fruit, especially strawberries and raspberries. After the pandemic, we got to start planning 2 or 3 years ahead and go and try to find people or farmers to grow these or growers to grow these products for us and plan ahead. So a lot has changed, Brian. It's a totally different industry, and we hope things going back to normal, but we're still not there. And
Jeff, your view as a producer.
So my view as a producer, some of the stuff has changed post-pandemic, and then if you want to throw in there post, or not post, but because of some of the unsettling events in Europe and now in the Middle East, I know that I've got involved with a fellow out of Ontario, and we used to bring in, or I used to buy from him fertilizers that were shipped in from countries that were, quite friendly with Russia, and so the materials were brought in there, and it was made into a fertilizer. So one of the things that's forced people to do is to take a look at where they were buying these products and how hard was it going to be to actually get your hands on them because of events that are out of your control. So what he's done is he's put together a new fertilizer facility that he's building right on the St. Lawrence, just in Ontario. So instead of having the product made over in European countries and with materials that were pulled out of Russia and Belarus and other countries, what he's done is he's sourced them. He's now going to be sourcing them from countries that are a little more friendly to the West, and then he's going to actually make the products in Canada and onshoring that type of stuff here. So I think that is going to be, there's bad things that happen in all events like that, pandemics and wars, but there's actually, generally what happens is good things, come out of it at the end of it. It's not all totally bad.
Brett, as a processor.
I think the two biggest things that I've seen is cost and reliability have really changed in this area, and it's made everyone a little bit uneasy. It's made for maybe some hoarding to some extent, which only amplifies the problem. And it also has made it so that there's a lot more qualifications have come into place of relationships just because of the higher risk in the marketplace, and it makes more hurdles to jump through to fill out different qualifications and get things done. Like Sav said, you have to be way more on top of things. There's a lot more effort put into planning and making sure that things happen on time, and things you took for granted, 5 years ago, you can't take for granted anymore. And so that's changed things a lot. And then, yeah, as far as inputs and everything and all the stuff that we do, it's the nice thing of the ecosystem with working with the co-op and partners like that is that if we don't have fertilizer, then they don't have ingredients. So we work well together.
I like that.
All right, moving forward, we tend to focus on the challenges, pandemic, high prices, etc. What is the one thing that these challenges have changed to create something positive for the future? And I'll go to the retail staff first on this.
Something positive, you're asking? Well, for us, it's definitely trying to localize our supply chain as much as possible. And, that was always a big thing for a brand. It was always, definitely something I'm passionate about. But it just kind of makes you think, like, how can we develop more product in Western Canada, where we're from, kind of thing, and how do you add more value instead of just shipping seeds or whatever? Is how do you develop more product? How do we get more investment here in Western Canada? And trust me, we spend a lot of time on that. Even as a retailer, is trying to convince companies to invest and build plants here. So, and hats off to Brett. He built a plant in Tisdale, Saskatchewan, and how many people are building plants in a small town of in the Prairie? So, there's risk definitely, but it's just so that's what we're trying to do. Is how do we get more stuff made in Canada, in Western Canada?
Okay, I'm going to go to Jeff now, based on the producer.
Like I said earlier, to me, the positives that have come out of post-pandemic issues is the onshoring of things like fertilizer production, even if it is small, but that is a big benefit to having it here, because it is significantly cheaper to bring it back over here and from a freight perspective. But the other thing that I'm hearing and quite a bit about is protein. We used to grow peas here in a nice, clean, sustainable way, and then we'd ship them overseas into China. They'd get fractionated, and then we'd buy the protein back. And I think now, that protein market, I think, is gonna take off here. I think you're gonna see probably a few more plants, hopefully, pop up in those spaces. So I think, to me, the biggest benefit of everything post-pandemic is the onshoring of those types of things.
Brett, your comments.
Yeah, I would go on a little story here, but pre-pandemic, we were just launching. We were getting our company ready to go when everything was happening, and I can remember sitting down and talking to my wife and saying that there's so many good companies we can work with and opportunities, and we have to pick one, and it's really hard. And then the pandemic hit, and there was no opportunities. And we thought, oh my, this was a really bad plan, and now we're sitting here, crickets, everybody's busy dealing with their pandemic strategy and everything, and they just weren't looking to move new projects forward or with new partners. And so the good part about all that, it really drove us to sit back and figure out who we were and what our strengths were, and really strengthen our plan and spend some time looking inwardly. And then post-pandemic, we have been flooded with opportunity now because of the reason that, like Jeff said, product was getting shipped across the pond, and then the ingredients were coming back. But over the pandemic and all the logistics problems, they weren't coming back reliably, the costs were changing, things just weren't happening. And some people started to look at the risks of doing that versus getting it grown with a close partner in close proximity in North America. And our focus went from pre-pandemic to a very global perspective for our business and partners we talked to globally to more North American based and especially Canadian. And I think it's the best thing that ever happened to us, even though it was a learning curve. But I think that was the positive that came out of all this, was that we are working. And when you grow and you're a new company, the risks, you want to minimize the risks because there's lots of them. And working with people, Canadians that you're comfortable with, it really helps with the risk of the first early stages until you get more comfortable with what you're doing and can grow.
We're talking about the Canadian farm landscape. How is Canada preparing to produce more with less while preserving and enhancing the livelihoods of small scale and family farmers?
That's a pretty loaded question. I don't really know. I think the days of the family farm are there. It's still a family farm. It's always a family farm, whether you're farming 500 acres or 50,000 acres. So, there is maybe the odd type corporate farm, but they're very unsuccessful. So, I know there's been a lot of consolidation, but it's been good because there's a lot of people that are exiting the space that have kids that don't want to farm, and now they've got options to sell out at really good prices. So they've got a pretty good retirement on their plate. So, but they're not selling to a big corporation like they're selling to, say, Brett, which is a family-run operation. It's just the landscape of how that family-run operation has changed how it looks. And, I think that it's for the better personally, because when you go and drive around the countryside, I don't see too many fields that look very rough. Whereas 25 or 30 years ago, when you drive by down the highway, you'd see a nice field, well looked after, and then you'd see one that's a little rougher, and that's all changed. It's all the people that are left farming now, are really, really good operators, and I think that has been for the better.
Looking at walking in a grocery store, looking at the shelves, Sav, what's going to happen in the future? What's going on in your stores, and how big are changes happening weekly, monthly, yearly?
It's all going to be private label product. Yeah, we're obviously with inflation, and that's massive changes is going on. Shopping habits are definitely changing. We are seeing obviously a rise on our private label products because they are at better value. So there is some value shopping going on definitely as sales are increasing in that segment, about 2 or 3% higher than total. For the future for us, it's still trying to develop more Western Canadian products and growing that relationship. Love to see more innovation. Product innovation is still huge, and we want to get back at it. It took kind of a dip for all of us during the pandemic, but new products drive growth. So I don't think from strategically it's changed a lot. I think some of the ways of doing it have changed, but at the same time, consumers are still looking for new products. And
Brett, big discussions going on in agriculture every day. Climate change, what do you see?
That's a good one.
I see radical weather events much more normal. I see where we live being somewhat benefited lately because we're getting longer growing season and we're getting less rain, because we get too much rain, and usually we fight the rain. So actually, it's very interesting how the different parts of the world are having to adapt slightly with what they grow and how they produce, because the weather's much hotter near the equator than most crops have to be bred a lot to put up with that heat and still produce well. Whereas where we are, what we found is that we're actually being benefited. But I think the biggest issue that I see is the variability of the weather since we've got into it, and how there's very little general weather patterns. They're very segregated in little areas, and your neighbor can have the best weather for the summer that he's ever had and grow an amazing crop, whereas just across the road and a few miles down, you could have no rain that summer and not have a crop. So I think that's the biggest thing, is the variability, and the risk has went up on the weather side. But what's happened in the world is that with the products from the breeding of the crops, from the crop protection products, from the equipment, and just all the technology agronomists and all the people that add value to everything are able to, how they're able to adapt and make it so that we have tools to manage that risk better has been pretty amazing too.
I just, sorry, can I add to that? Yeah, I mean, climate has been a major factor and has driven some of our price increases, definitely. So you have a pandemic, we had a very tight supply chain system. You have a pandemic that strains it, and then you have, Russia invading Ukraine, which strains it more, and then you have these weather patterns that just strains it even more. So it's just one building on the other. What's going on in Europe right now, huge drought. It's good, modern farming, agriculture for us, we can adapt, but, to grow an olive tree that's, 100 years old or whatever to produce olives, you can't adapt that quickly. So, olive oil is the latest one where there's going to be huge, we're looking at 50, 60, 70% price increases because you can't get olive oil because of the drought. So, and that has a huge impact, right across the system.
Jeff?
Similar to what Sav says about price increases, I was talking with Brian earlier on about mustard, and due to climate change, most of the mustard in the world is grown in Saskatchewan, but yet in Saskatchewan, pretty much I would say 95% of it is grown in the southwest. And if anybody knows how the southwest part of the province is done, and which is where I grew up and originally farmed, it's a total disaster. Like they've had, no crops for 4 years. And so, your commodities are gonna, like mustard has gone through the roof. I mean, it was, when we were growing it, it was, we were excited when we would get 16 cents a pound. And that was 20 years ago. Now we're looking at, it's hit as high as $2 a pound. And I think it's probably back in that 85 to $1 a pound right now. And I would see it going up higher. And that's all related to climate change and, less rains. But with that, you go to the north, part of the Manitoba, the Peace, Prince Albert, they're getting a lot more frost-free days, a lot less rain. Same with where we farm in Regina. Our biggest problem was we'd see people would look at all this nice, beautiful flat land and they'd go, well, it's just gorgeous to farm there. And so we'd go seed 100% of the farm, and then we'd combine 70% of it. So you'd put out inputs for everything, and then you'd only harvest 70% of it. And so now we're finding that we're quite a bit drier, and we're not having flooding events. Every year around Farm Progress, we'd always cringe because we'd get 2 or 3 inches of rain and lose 20 or 30% of our seeded acres. Now we don't really lose much. And like Brett said, I mean, they're growing better grains as well too from a grading standpoint. I mean, now I think you're seeing rarely a 3 or worse or a feed grade on wheat. Like we're generally always growing a 1, maybe a 2. And durum, which used to, for 20 years, we never grew #1 durum. And we were growing it in the Palliser Triangle, which is the best durum growing area in the world. And we couldn't get a 1, but now pretty much every year, I think you're growing better grades, but in certain areas, they're suffering a lot more because they're getting, along with the better grades, they're getting a lot less rain.
All right, it's time to go to the floor. Any questions for any of our panelists from the floor? If not, I want to thank the 3 panelists, Brett Casavant. Oh, sorry.
Is this even, oh, there it's on.
This question is probably for Sav. With the products that you're growing and selling within the co-op and that, are you advertising also to some of the niche groups that your berries and stuff like that, having it less sugar in it or also less gluten?
Yes, definitely. That's a great question. We're looking at ways, we're developing a product actually with Brett's Oats and Faba Bean right now. We're really excited about this, but just imagine eating, and we're still in the planning stages, so imagine eating like a Fruit Loops type product, but is high in protein and zero sugar in it. So that's our goal, definitely, especially because of all the new front-end packaging regulations coming out by 2025, where you have to warn consumers about sugar and sodium and fat on the front of your label. That's we're gonna see a lot of reformulations, especially items that are close, and trying to find some substitutes for all those as well. So yeah, that's a big growth area for sure, and it's good because we can use a lot of the local products. We just tasted a muffin using some of Brett's products again, ingredients, a muffin mix, and it was obviously gluten-free, egg-free, vegan, and it was really, really good, and you couldn't tell the difference. My son ate it in 3 seconds, so that was a pretty good sign. And he's a big sugar eater, by the way.
Okay, moving on. First of all, I want to thank Brett, Sav, and Jeff for an excellent afternoon and the comments. One thing is within the supply chain, which I've experienced ever since the pandemic, was the shift of North American retail reprofiling all their ingredients in North American supply. That was a major task with a lot of retailers. That was brought on to ensure the product was on the shelf. And so you saw a lot of product redevelopment, new partnerships, collaboration with producers in Canada and across the US, which was a major task by a lot of retailers and producers across North America. In closing, I want to thank these 3 gentlemen. Let's give them a big hand here.